Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, here with my Supercoach BBL team discussions, kicking off with the Adelaide Strikers, and then I'll move through all the other 7 teams in alphabetical order. As always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular the YouTube, Spotify, and get in contact with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100 or Swizz26 for me directly. For those new to the program, I try to just do a little bit of a team review, go through likely round 1 lineups, how many players you should be considering starting from this particular team, trade-in options, and then a little bit of discussion around the fixture as well. Try to keep these to 8 to 10 minutes. All right, so the fixture, very important for the Strikers. We've got the double games of round 2 and round 4, bye in round 6. That will mean they will have 6 games in the first 4 weeks. I'm actually leaning towards starting more Strikers than Scorchers. Scorchers also have the double in the round 2, but I find the Strikers lineup is a lot more settled than what the Scorchers lineup is. Their weather report is also looking really handy for the Strikers. 32 degrees in Canberra before 31 degrees and 26 degrees for their round 2 match. So a lot of confidence trying to pick players. Obviously, a lot can change with time of recording. There's still 10 days until the Brisbane Heat match, but a lot of confidence around that so far. In regards to how many Strikers I want to probably have at least 4 or 5. The perfect world is you want sort of that 8 or 9 for each double game. So between the Strikers and the Scorchers, I'll probably be trying to target 8 to 9 players between them. So the best way I'm finding to start them is I'm going to be starting quite a few Strikers players and try to trade into the Scorchers. So currently I have in my team 4 Strikers players, and then I won't have to sort of look at trading them in, and I'll be focusing on the Scorchers. If you are the other way and you're trying to start the Scorchers, that's fine. So we'll discuss what Strikers players you might need to trade into. The most important one is Matt Short, 304k, break even of 101, currently in 46% of teams. Would not be surprised if that rises with the people still finding out the news of Maxwell and Hardy not playing in round 1. That break even of 101, Supercoach Gold has them predicted going slightly up in price with a projected score of 112. Last year scored 137 against the Thunder at Manuka, so the same venue. Also scored 159 against them and 53 in his last 3 outings. Had an absolute fantastic year last year, 270 and a 264 in 2 of the rounds, and then even the year before that, scored 180. 173 and a 188, so you can see why he's very highly valued, and even at that price, I just think he's a no-brainer to not only start with, because then we don't have the stress of trying to trade him in. Yes, if he blobs up and he doesn't bowl, and potentially could drop between 20 and 50k that first round, and you pick him up a little bit cheaper. But then the other factor is what happens if he does score over that 101 and you're all of a sudden paying 310, 315, 320 for him. How are you going to try to get him in? I've had a few people send me teams with him not in it and saying they're going to look at trading Webster and Curran and a combination and using their boosted 4 trades to get short a couple of cheap ones in. But I think it's a lot easier to start with him and then try to trade some of the lesser, cheaper players in. In a perfect world, you might not want to try to trade out Webster and Curran because they also have a double in round 3. I think just easy to start with Matt Short. If you want to fade him completely, 100% take that risk. If it pays off, you're going to be pretty well leading or one of the leaders in Supercoach, but it is a big risk, especially because we know what he can do. Didn't have the best series against Pakistan in the international series recently, but against Queensland in the first class match did make 54 and 59, so does have good form of the bat. And I'm still, even with the spinners in this side with Boyce, Pope and Fabian Allen, still think he probably opens up in that first over, might bowl a second over if it's a good one, or maybe in the power play comes on and bowls one there, depending on how the other spinners are going. So, we know he's a wicket taker and did bowl in that international series. And my second player that I've currently got is Jamie Overton, currently in 20% of sides, 202,000. 207,000. Is a little bit easier to trade too if you're starting a Webster or a Curran. Break even of 69. Pretty consistent player. Did have that massive round last year where we went 195, but outside of that is pretty consistent. So probably easier to trade into him than it is short. But again, I just think it's just easier to start the two strikers that I want most. Short to captain and try to get me a double score there, and then Jamie Overton, who could be potentially a pod captain or VC in that second round. But I just think you'll want to own him anyway. And can fit into your battle bowler. I've got him in my batting lineup at the moment because he is that dual position player. The worry for him was had he recovered from that back stress fracture that he had, but he did recently play in the West Indies, the international series in 1 days and T20s over there. 32 off 21 in one game, took 3 for 20, 1 for 27, 1 for 17, and some of the others. So the fact that he's back bowling as well, you'd expect him to bowl probably his 4 overs for the strikers. Of the other batsmen there, Darcy Short, Chris Lynn. Chris Lynn's had actually a fantastic series over T10 over in the UAE. Did make a 68 and 39 not out in pretty quick fashion. So one maybe to watch in that first week. But he is very expensive this year at 197. Jake Weatherall, I think he's sort of fighting with Alex Ross for that number 4 batting spot. They could potentially, maybe leave one of the bowlers out, but I think that might leave them a little thin. Darcy Short can bowl, did take 3 for 100 in a Perth Premier game recently, but his batting form hasn't been too flash. Jake Weatherall did make 65 in the first class game against South Australia, so he's probably got the nod at the moment over Alex Ross in there. Harry Nilsson's in 15% of sides. I think that's people sort of fighting between him and Harper on which way they want to go for a cheaper keeper. Form again with the bat hasn't been great. There's a reason why he's 58.5k, so personally I'd be staying away from there. For the bowlers, Fabian Allen, so he is from the West Indies. He has landed, so we'll be here for round 1. Form over in the T10 wasn't great. Only bowled a few overs. Didn't really get much of a bat. Hoping for a better showing from him. But at the moment, he is in my side, but he's sort of been in and out, depending on kind of what I want to do with how many players from starting with the Stars and Renegades versus those strikers and Scorchers. But not a huge confidence with him. I kind of want to see how he goes first game before bringing him in, but at 117k, could be a good one there. It does worry me because they've obviously committed to playing Boyce and Pope. Well, that's what their coach has said. So how many spinners can you play in the team and how many overs are going to be chewed up from them? So a little bit more of a watch from them, and that's the same with Boyce and Pope. Let's just kind of see if they both do get the nod and how many overs both of them bowl. The ones I'm really interested in is Brendan Doggett and Henry Thornton. Doggett's form's been really good with the ball in first-class cricket this year. He's taken 20 wickets, was part of the test squad. Been released now unless something else happens and there's another injury. So we've just got to be mindful of that. So that's why I'm not starting Doggett, but a cheaper option to potentially trade into round 2 if I need to. Just want to make sure that he is released and playing both games. Where Thornton, with the ball recently in the first class match, took 3 for 41 and 1 for 96. 98k. This guy has had a great history in Supercoach BBL. I think for his price, with a break even of 33, it is worth the risk. Last year I only scored 4 against the Thunder, but then also in the previous years went 62 and 143. So didn't probably have his best year last year, which is reflected in his price. And did have the 101 and then dropped off massively after that. But in years before that, he kicked off the year against the Thunder with a 260 game, and then backed it up with some consistent scores. Did drop off later in the year, but it was an absolute brilliant start. And then the year before finished the year with a 172 against Perth. So has the ability to take bags of wickets, and I think 98k. It's just a sort of a no-brainer. He's sitting on my bench at the moment and he'll be ready to go for that second match. Another one that a lot of people are looking at is Buckingham, currently in 24% of teams, has had that rib injury. So it's just a wait and see to sort of how he recovers. Don't mind people wanting to start him as a cheap option on the bench and then hope he gets right. And that's sort of him versus James Baisley there. I think Baisley's just slightly on the outer with the way they're going to line up. 25% of sides. I get why the fact that he's appealing because of his price. and has had some really good form in Queensland Premier this season, has made 474 runs and taken 19 wickets in 24 games. But I would prefer, if I'm debating between one and the other, Buckingham is the cheaper option, unless you really need that dual position player with Bazley. But the fact that we've got that flex position does make it a little bit easier around that. So I'd probably start Buckingham just because I think they might want the extra pace bowler, and they've got sort of players a bit like Bazley who can play that role. So if I was at 25% of people, I'd try to pivot to somebody else and just kind of have a look at how they line up in that first match. So hopefully everybody's enjoyed that, and stay tuned for our next team, which will be Brisbane Heat. Good night, everyone.